This episode of ChatEDU is sponsored by the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing. On July 10th, Liz, I believe they're doing a COP.
A community of practice.
Yes, indeed. This is the intersection. Sorry, I cut you off. You were going to say something.
I was going to say at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
Oh, thank you. That's important information. So yeah, if you're interested in the intersection between AI and Industry 4.0, this is a great group to join. Free, and highly encourage you to do that. Liz, how's Florida? You're at ISTE, ASCD, which is now just ISTE.
It is. It is now the International Society of Transforming Education.
Nice.
So they're just going by ISTE. Richard Coulada announced that on Sunday's opening. It's hot, but I haven't been outside. I left my hotel room at 7:30 yesterday morning and did not get back till 10:30. I've been super busy. So many cool student projects. Of course, that's what I'm looking for when I'm down here, meeting lots of people. Maybe next week I can talk about some of the student work that I saw while I was down here. Just amazing stuff. I presented twice yesterday. I'm presenting today. So it's been all great.
Fantastic. You are a rock star, Dr. Rade. Hey, listen, because you're down in the where it's all happening, clearly lots of conversations about AGI and ASI. Pop quiz, like, what are these things?
AGI is artificial general intelligence.
Oh my God, you're like almost missed it. Yeah, sorry. Carry on.
Listen, I just told you how long I was out yesterday. That is well beyond my boundaries. So yes, AGI is artificial general intelligence when AI is as smart as the smartest human, right?
All of us, right? Yeah, exactly. And then they have ASI, right?
That is artificial super intelligence when AI surpasses what even the fastest human, smartest human can do. So it's been compared to a human brain compared to an ant's brain, and then a human brain compared to ASI, that same difference.
Okay, gotcha. And in that world, right, the good news is that we would solve all the problems: energy, desalination, cancer, all of it solved.
Sure.
Even the world's hardest knitting patterns. Yeah, so Professor Mollick has coined a new ASI, which in this case is not super intelligence, but slider intelligence.
Like hamburgers? Like sliders?
Exactly, right? So here's what happened. We'll put this important link into the show notes. So this is from NPJ Science of Food. Generative AI creates delicious, sustainable, and nutritious burgers, Dr. Rade. Okay. So a bunch of folks did some research and they developed a 2-stage diffusion model. Diffusion is really interesting. It's kind of what they use for images. So rather than next word prediction, it has all this crazy scattered data. The data is just broken apart and smashed. And then diffusion models kind of put it together and synthesize it. That is the quickest definition I can do. So there's a diffusion model framework that models human food preferences from recipe data to create optimized burger recipes. The model has successfully rediscovered on its own the classic Big Mac without explicit supervision and generated novel alternatives optimized for deliciousness, sustainability, and nutrition. So they did these blind tastes, 101 participants. And so they took all these burger recipes and then created artificial slider intelligence. Now that's Professor Mollick's coining. I'm not sure that these folks did the same thing, but super interesting. They actually figured out how they could create more sustainable mushroom burgers and bean burgers that were really delicious. So the diffusion model really performed here. The key quote from the authors is that together, these results establish generative AI as the quantitative framework for learning human taste and navigating complex trade-offs in principled food design. You're a burger consumer, aren't you?
I am a very plain meat on bread hamburger consumer.
Yeah, so I guess you would not need the artificial slider intelligence burger because you are not optimized for all sorts of Big Mac deliciousness.
No. And when you said bean burgers and mushroom burgers, I was out at that point and thinking in my head, I don't know that you can optimize for deliciousness, sustainability, and nutrition all at once, because I think some of the deliciousness of the burger is that it is not particularly nutritious.
Huh. That skeptic is Dr. Elizabeth Rade. I'm Matt Mervis, and this is ChatEDU, the show about leading and learning. Sometimes it doesn't really feel like the show about leading and learning with these starts, but that's okay in the age of AI. In today's episode, keeping student thinking visible, why AI is making classrooms harder in a good way, We'll feature an interview from this spring with a distinguished, I think she was runner-up for Connecticut State Teacher of the Year, right? Distinguished high school teacher Kate Avcali. Kate shares her practical strategies for integrating AI in the classroom and her work to prioritize student thinking and cognition over mere compliance.
Yeah, I'm excited to share that interview. We got to do that one together in the office, which was really fun. But before that, we'll give you the show rundown. We're going to kick off this week with a look at Connecticut's comprehensive new AI legislation.
Then we'll go hot to the field where Dr. Elizabeth Rade is with a couple updates from ISTE Orlando, from Google, both from the funding side and some tool side.
Then we'll return to a fascinating tip from our listener, Patricia, about Civ AI and a growing movement across Europe to build localized platforms and break free from American tech dependence.
Yes, as promised, then we're going to go beneath the surface. This is a short rundown, nice long interview with Kate. And of course, we will end Dr. Rade with
another great Bright Bite.
Excellent. So Liz, right in our backyard, the little old nutmeg state, they passed in the last legislative session, which was Senate Bill 5. We had a chance to collaborate on this a little bit with some of the sponsors of the legislation. This was featured on Fox News, and one of our favorite partners, Colleen Bielitz, was featured in the interview, which is really cool, from Southern Connecticut State University. Tell us about this one, Liz.
So Connecticut passed Senate Bill 5, which is a comprehensive artificial intelligence law, which established a statewide AI academy for training and an AI higher education alliance to connect colleges with industry. There's some mandates in there, one being that every public school district integrate computer science and AI into its curriculum, though educators have expressed some concerns over, like, this was an unfunded mandate, and so there's some funding disparities between districts and decline in student attention spans due to surface level learning because of AI.
I thought Colleen actually spoke to the equity issues, which you often really do a great job bringing to the surface. What did Colleen have to say there?
Yeah, she said, I think this is where the balance is going to be, where you'll have some districts that are well-funded and will have access to different types of AI software or programs. This is where disparity comes into play. And that gap kind of widens even further, which is another concern of mine. But she continues and says, we've needed this legislation for a while. As somebody who stayed on top of AI governance, I have to say SB 5 is one of the most comprehensive AI laws in the nation.
Yeah, super interesting. Now, obviously, the part that caught our attention, I mean, a few things did. The AI Academy is going to be a really interesting model. It's essentially this is Charter Oak College, and they're trying to create a foundation for every citizen, every educator, bumps right up into some very interesting spaces that we work on, are prepared to use AI in meaningful ways. So it's going to be really interesting to keep track of that. But certainly this idea that every high school now, and the state's been pushing this for a bit, to require the integration of computer science and therefore also AI as part of that mix becomes important. We reached out to two of our favorite partners, Jackie Coricelli from West Hartford and John Tush from Hartford, who are leaders in the Connecticut Computer Science Teachers Association. And maybe we'll bring them in soon and have a little chat about this as it matures. But yeah, they were, John especially was involved in the legislative process, and they're really exciting. The new computer science standards, which will be revealed in July, I think, at their national conference, really speaks to this integration between CS, whether it's algorithmic design or machine readable code, computational systems. There's several places where the standards for CS intersect in a meaningful way with AI. The trick is going to be, as Colleen said, and you pointed out, how is this evenly approached? How do all schools take advantage of it? We have a heat map in Connecticut that shows where CS is required or the number of CS courses, and the map is uneven for sure. So there's a gap here to close.
Definitely.
Jackie did share that there's going to be a website that's launched in July, so maybe we'll cover that story when it comes out in just a few short weeks. We're right here. By the way, Dr. Rade, you notice I'm in West Stockbridge, you're in Florida, but what am I drinking out of here?
That lovely ChatEDU mug. Look at you.
Not bad, not bad. All right. Well, since you're in Florida at ISTE, newly named ISTE, a couple announcements from Google, right? So, and I think there'll be more. So we're going to be a little early here because we're recording on Tuesday and ISTE is just rolling along this week. But Google rolled out a bunch of new things in the Google Classroom, Workspace, Notebook LM, Gemini. So give us some of the highlights there, Liz.
So all kinds of new things in the AI Google space. So Google introduced study notebooks in Gemini, which enable students to take diagnostic quizzes that will then generate personalized learning paths with bite-sized lessons.
Hmm.
Gemini, which already supports full-length SAT prep, is now also going to add GRE and ACT.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
Yep. So GREs are for grad school. ACT is kind of the competitor to SAT. Our friends across the pond are like, great for the Americans, but it doesn't help anybody prepare for anything else but that.
Right. They did a little bit on the LTI stuff too, which is like the technology integration on platforms. So more maturity on Canvas, more on Moodle. I think I've shared. I'm working with some community colleges that are rocking Moodle to the day, which is awesome. So that's really interesting. Yeah, a lot here, right? The read aloud feature is being expanded to all levels. Interesting stuff here for Chromebooks, the ability, and I think they teased this 6 months ago, but the ability for teachers to lock kids in browsers and Chromebooks, which doesn't work in a BYOD environment, but lots of teachers who, really want to create an alternative to the blue book where kids are still using technology to write and edit and process and have all the accessibility features available to them, which are important. um,
Right. Very
have the
important.
ability also to make sure kids aren't like bouncing over to Gemini to do some of that work. So yeah, anything else excite you
Yeah.
in the list of things from Google?
One of the things is it looks like there's going to be a tool for teachers to lock kids into the guided learning mode on AI, like when they're in Gemini. And
Oh,
that's something that I think that's coming out. And I think that's through the Chromebooks, but maybe some other ways. But this has been something like we show teachers guided learning and they're like, how can I make my students do that? And we're like, well, you can't. But I think that may change. That will give some kids some access to.
two of my favorite slides in my keynote are showing guided learning and then saying, but what happens when the kid deselects guided learning is
Yep.
that the AI will comply with their every wish, hope, and demand. Sweet. Also down there, google.org, which does a lot of funding, funded a couple projects were just great, right? So AI EDU is a program that we've featured a few times. They've done really interesting work where they have these AI fellows. Like they do a wonderful job as a nonprofit investing in people and programs and projects and letting those things disseminate and grow. So they've done rural grant investments, they've done AI fellow investments, a range of AI readiness strategies. So a big bunch of support for AI EDU to continue and sustain their work. Some support for ISTE for sure, and also for Renaissance Philanthropy. I believe we covered, I think those are the folks that are doing some really interesting work with natural language processing for younger students. So yeah, big announcements down there. I'm sure Microsoft and all the wrapper companies and everyone else is down there too, but we tend, because so many of our schools are in the Google ecosystem, we tend to kind of put those things forward for sure. Liz, we have had the nicest notes. By the way, I got the nicest note this morning from a kid out in Wyoming as a college student. They said, hey, does anyone ever tell you sound like the Notebook LM podcast? I was like, no, never heard it. But such a nice student, and just really appreciated all the learning that has taken place from the podcast on their behalf. So that's great. So Patricia Rootstart is someone from a country. I was so unkind where I tease that you don't love Norway. I know that you think you love all things Northern European. So Patricia's in the Netherlands. She sent us a few notes over time, just really appreciating the podcast and the work that she's doing in her world. And she said, hey, you got to check out this thing called civai.eu. I don't know if you got a chance to peek at it. It's a really cool website. It's essentially meant to be like a European, it's not a wrapper exactly, but it's like a European model, but designed for government and education that doesn't have dependence on big tech and vendor lock-in and all that kind of stuff. And she shared that there's a guy named Pascal Morini, I hope I'm getting that right, is the founder and educator himself, and posts regularly on the alternatives to big tech, which seems like a really promising story between the doom and gloom scenarios that we hear about AI. So yeah, it might even here in the States, it might be interesting to check out civai.eu. But I couldn't help notice that like a day after she sent me that email or that message on LinkedIn, from Wired Magazine, Europe is fed up and wants its own AI. This is Stephen Levy, who's a fantastic journalist. So what did Stephen uncover here in the world of AI and the EU?
Yeah, I mean, you basically hit the nail on the head. European leaders are actively pursuing AI sovereignty to reduce dependence on American technology. The tech has American things in it, including US centric values, restrictive export policies. And so There's these historic difficulties in matching Silicon Valley investment and ecosystem scale. So European efforts are gaining momentum through new government funding, cross-border infrastructure collaborations, and the realization that American AI access is no longer guaranteed or reliable. Some of this coming on the backs of Claude Fable being just for Americans, and we couldn't track it if you were overseas, so they just shut it all down. It definitely gave Europeans pause and maybe thinking a little bit more about what they want to do instead of just relying on American AI models.
Yeah, fascinating. So we will drop both the civai.edu and the Wired story into the show notes. All right, Liz, that was a shortened one. Let's get to this fantastic interview with Kate Avcali. School districts across the country and the globe are working to balance growing community concerns about digital wellness with the very real need to build AI literacy and digital fluency. To help schools navigate that tension, EdAdvance and ChatEDU have launched the Screen Shift, a comprehensive educational technology review and insight system designed to help students prioritize quality in every digital minute. Through surveys, classroom walkthroughs, infrastructure analysis, curriculum review, and focus groups, the Screen Shift gives districts the inputs and strategic recommendations they need to drive more intentional and impactful uses of technology. To learn more, shoot us an email at chatedU@edadvance.org or visit skills21.org/AI/ScreenShift. It's been a while since we've had three people, right? It was you, me, and Ed Duclo, and then I think you, me, and Jonathan.
Yeah.
But listen, we are leveling up here.
Yes, we are.
We have Kate Avcali, who is just a distinguished teacher, like literally a distinguished teacher. We'll talk about that. Terryville High School, do you know what they are? They're the home of the
Fighting Roos.
And what is a fighting roo?
A fighting kangaroo.
Fighting kangaroo. All right, let's get into the meat of the topic here. Just about every time you and I present, if we're having a conversation, Kate, about academic integrity and the kids using the AI in nefarious ways, Liz or I will mention that there's this crazy idea where students could use a chatbot, right? They could be using Gemini, and we could assess what they're doing in Gemini is actually like something that could get graded and be, instructive for all sorts of purposes, including AI literacy. And it's so much fun. I've done this enough time to watch teachers go, huh. Sometimes I get a double head twist, right?
Double, yeah.
And I mentioned your name. So we thought it would just be great to have you come and talk to us about what in God's name, Kate, is going on in your classroom. And hi.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll weave into this classroom thing.
All right. So I've been a teacher for probably 20 plus years. I took a little time off in the middle to raise my kids, but I've been at Terryville for 11 years now. And about 2 or 3 years ago, a friend of mine who's in the district was like, "Hey, have you heard about this AI stuff?"
Let's say who he is.
Oh,
He'll be delighted.
Yeah, Darren Vigliotti. I'll give him a shout out.
Perfect.
And so he was like, "Hey, have you heard about this?" And so we started playing around with it a little bit in the teacher side of it. And then about a year ago, he sent me this article by Mike Kentz, which is Grade the Chat, Not the Essay. And I was like, this is fascinating. How do I do it? And so I went through some approval process with my superintendent. We officially have an AI policy. It meets the policy. And then this year, all last summer I planned for it, and this year I've been throwing anything I could against the wall to see what sticks.
Okay, so let's peel back the onion now another layer, right? Because you've actually developed at 10,000 feet. That sounds really cool. You developed all these protocols and processes. So Mike Kentz, who's a fascinating guy, right? He has this, as you said, very provocative. Grade the chat, not the essay. And I think I've talked to Mike. I think he knew that was like a great headline. I think he probably finds value in both. But literally, how does that work? What does it look like?
Yeah. So in my classroom, which is a high school English classroom, I teach 2 different preps, as they're called. I have a senior English, which is like a CP, like mid to low level integrated. Yep. And then I have an ECE class, which is through UConn. It's the multimedia class, but I'm doing the pilot in that class as well. So that's called Voices in America. And that's actually like an interdisciplinary, super multifaceted class that's really fascinating, but they can also earn college credit. So it's all English all the time, but we do a lot of different stuff.
And you're working with the oldest kids in the school.
I am, although I taught
seniors.
Yeah, mostly seniors. But one of the things that we're going to be talking about in our common planning time in the coming months, I'm the department coordinator. So one of the things that I have broached with them is how can we scaffold this? And then in our AI planning committee, we're talking about branching it out like from 6-12. So giving them some foundational skills like 6th through 8th grade so that when they come to us, we kind of know what their skill set is, and then how can we weave that into the classes to make sure that we're like pushing their thinking.
So what does it look like? Like walk us through an assignment.
I've done a couple things here at Advance, but the most recent one that we just finished was my seniors are doing like an ethical. We've been studying ethics. So we talked a lot about media literacy and media bias, and then we looked at ethics and what that looks like in real life, what ethical tensions are, how to apply some of the resolutions to that, et cetera. Real good place kind of application of things. And then my younger daughter's thrilled by that, by the way. And so what I did was we created this thing where they had a list of choices where they could create their own ethical problem. And they had to design a policy where they created a solution to the ethical problem. So most of them chose like a true crime, which was what we've been focusing on.
Liz,
Love it.
Delighted.
Love it.
So they've
hang
been
out.
researching and studying how different true crime representations in the media are ethical. Some are more ethical, some are less ethical.
Okay.
A lot of them actually chose whether or not influencers should be allowed to have true crime podcasts because it's a question of whether or not they're ethical in their representation of information because they don't have to follow journalistic guidelines.
Yeah.
So what's fascinating about this is that like it's human first, human last. So the very first step of the project is that they have to take their thoughts about a problem and they have to dump them onto the paper. So like a brain dump, but like a whole class period of just brain dumping on all these different elements.
Okay.
Then steps 2 through 4, they work with a group. So anybody that has a similar problem as they do, they sort of like group themselves together. They don't really use a notebook yet, but they can use any kind of research that they want. So they can use any Gemini, or they can use just regular straight Google, but they're trying to get some information on the problem itself and how it shows up in places. Okay. From there, they have to develop some kind of policy. So they also have to do a little research on what does that policy look like in real life. And all of that is scaffolded. And that's an important part of the process because it's broken into individual steps. And then what they do is I write a gem. So I take a gem and I create a set of directions to pressure test their policy, push back on their thinking and sort of make that thinking a little bit more visible. And so it poses individual questions to them. It says, what are some things you haven't thought of? Here's some suggestions. What do you think about this? And then it forces them to answer before it moves on to the next step.
Okay, and I think most people get this, but if you're not familiar, so a gem is basically a custom chatbot. Mm-hmm. So you've programmed in English a custom chatbot that they use themselves, mm-hmm. and it has these guardrails in it or instructions in it, which basically helps them refine their thinking on their topic and policy.
Yeah. And then it pushes back on their policy and says, hey, have you thought about this? Hey, have you considered this? Hey, that might be a problem. Okay. And it forces them to reconsider whether or not they're going to revise their policy.
How's that experience been? Like, are they into that dialogue?
No, they hate me at first. They hate me at first. But actually, like...
They hate you or they hate the gem?
Well,
they know who's responsible.
They know it's my fault, so they don't like it. I'm one of the very few people utilizing AI in my room in this way. So it's really me. But after a while, like when they have to come back and do the human last part, which is presenting, right? The way that this worked was they had a Shark Tank set of questions. So they had individuals in the room who were responsible for asking their group questions about their policy. Mm-hmm. So they wouldn't have been prepared to answer some of those really hard lifting questions about how to enforce it. What are some of the key problems? Like, what are the new problems that result from your policy if they hadn't been able to then go back and have this gem pressure test their thinking before they got up and stood there. Sure. So they acknowledge, and what they're working on right now before break is a reflection. How did the gem help you prepare for the presentation? And I'll tell you that between the scaffolding and breaking down of information that was my doing for them, like breaking it into smaller parts, and then the gem's ability to sort of be at everyone's seat when I can't, those two things together forced better presentations than I have ever gotten.
Nice.
Is it the best presentation? Like, was it perfect? No. They're high school kids who have never seen policy before. So does that mean that automatically like gems, and like this is what I say about the cheating, right? It's really about your assignment that's the cheating problem. It's not so much about the kids themselves, right? But the cognitive offloading, which maybe that's like too, I'm assuming that like I'm in a bubble here with people who understand cognitive offloading, but like with cognitive offloading, like the kids are able to have space to really dig into some of those heavier ethical questions and ethical ideas about whether or not something like true crime is a problem.
I'm thinking about the assignment, and I guess could a kid just like put in a question and say like, can you write a new policy about the ethics of, or right? Like, so how much could AI do? And then where are those things that it can't do so that it is ultimately like AI proof?
Wait, so are you saying like the kids in the gym with their policy? Sorry, Kate.
That's all right.
Because I've been thinking about this. The kids in the gym with the policy, and they're going back and forth, and the gym is asking them hard questions. Are you worried that they're in ChatGPT in another application, telling ChatGPT what's going on in the gym and trying to move it over inside that?
Why not?
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they might.
And they're going to get a gold star for the multiple technology problem-solving strategy.
Or just from the beginning, right? Like, do you let them have AI write the actual policy?
So that's not, no, like the gem is written specifically to not do that.
Okay.
And we don't allow our students to have access to ChatGPT on their Chromebooks. I say on their Chromebooks because, of course, they can still do it on their phones, right? You can outsmart any set of directions.
Right.
AI can do any of it.
Right.
Which is kind of what's cool about it. Sure. Like you can do pretty much anything. But it's also like what's a little scary for teachers, right? Especially. I mean, it's scary for kind of everybody, but like for us particularly, how do we get them so that they can't just produce it? Now, I have a couple issues with that, which is like, number one, like the best people steal ideas anyway. So like, why does it matter so much if they're stealing the ideas? The issue is, can we make the thinking visible? Right? So like, can we get them to demonstrate that they understand the thing that they're stealing?
Right.
And so I don't really care if they create the policy from another ChatGPT, right? Like that, I don't care. I do a little bit only because what I really care about is whether or not they can then explain it. And when they're up
the Shark Tank moment.
Yeah, the Shark Tank moment. Like if they're up in front of the class and they don't know what they're talking about, and trust me, I had 9 presentations today. They don't always know, okay? Like they don't. And so those kids are then like their score is affected because they cannot articulate what their thought process is. But there is ample opportunity to get feedback from the AI, and there's ample opportunity to get feedback from me because I'm bouncing around the room for the whole week before, checking in, and every step of the process, part 1, part 2 to 4, part 5, which is the pressure test, like all of it gets feedback from me. So they're getting, because I can do it quicker because they're producing it, and then I go in after school and I'm like, hey, what about this? What about this? And then the next day they can use that feedback to guide the next step of the process. And so, yes, they can go in and they can cheat and they can do whatever they're going to do on ChatGPT or wherever they're going to do it. They can kind of outsmart almost all projects and assignments, but they can't outsmart it when they're standing in front of you and they haven't given it any independent thought. And so the goal is to get them to feel like they want to be able to prepare. I had 2 kids who did nothing today, but everybody else was able to at least try to answer the Shark Tank questions, right? It's very clear in the classroom, like who has done that kind of thing or who has done nothing. And honestly, it's mostly just that they don't do it. It's not that they're like cheating and then not thinking about it, right?
All right, so this is use case 1. Let's call this the GEM use case. Human start, human finish, GEM in the middle. We should not just gloss by the idea that you said these are some of the best presentations. Liz is found in her personal interest project work, which she documented in a little book called Learning They'll Love. You can buy it on ASCD, Amazon. I know when I get to 100th of those plugs, I'll stop. That, you found that when teachers are using AI in the PIPs are actually getting better too. But like Kent's article was called Grade the Chat, Not the Essay. So there's a use case I know in your world that is, let's go back to this, not to jargon it up, but Leon Furz's AI assessment scale where you have like these multiple levels. And one of those levels is fully using the AI in the writing process. So give us one of those, like where AI is using the writing process and you are grading their chats, there are rubrics, there are exemplars, they're like literally using the AI and then their use of the AI is part of the assessment.
So a lot of times what I'll do, like for example, even on this stress test, but there's another example that is my my college class, my ECE class, was prepping for a Socratic seminar. And they were learning about Space Cat, which is like a rhetorical like anagram. It's Space Cat is speaker, purpose, audience, context, and exigence, which is like the rhetorical situation. And then choices, appeals, and tone, which is like, it's basically how persuasive is the author and how effective is it?
This is giving you the suspicious look, but I love it.
Yeah, it's
Is it
great.
too late in the day for Space Cat?
A little bit, but
No, so basically it's rhetorical analysis, right? They're assessing how well written something is, how effective it is.
in convincing you of something.
And they're right.
Okay.
So like in this case, we were doing practice and they were looking at Pixar clips.
Okay.
So like the Edna scene in The Incredibles where like you have kids, right?
Yeah.
So the Edna scene where she's like, no capes, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, so that's a scene that I use as like a model and they analyze it for Space Cat, right? And then they, in quotes, and then they put their analysis of like what they found for each element of Space Cat and then what they found and like how and why it was effective. They write a little brief, human first. Then they plug it into a different gem. What they have to do then is the gem tests them. Like, hey, did you think about this? Did you see this? Because it's all about visual rhetoric. So it's a little bit of a shift because it's a video clip. So they have to think about visual rhetorical elements too and choices. And so then the gem exchange requires them, because my directions put this in, where it requires them to have like 6 total exchanges. So it's 3 back and forths. They don't have to do them in order. It can literally be like any 3 exchanges. And they have to copy and paste those because Gemini, we can talk about that. Gemini lags a little bit in its likability, but just to clarify, it lags in its ability to demonstrate to you what the kids are producing.
Yep.
So they copy and paste it into a Google Doc and they annotate it. So they annotate their conversation back and forth with the gem about their Space Cat analysis. And then they revise their analysis and that becomes their like sort of final submission. And then I give them feedback on that. And all of that comes into play in the class discussion, which is humans last.
What's the annotation?
The annotations is there's a couple different things. It's how did the gem do on changing or affecting your thinking? So it can be like, where in this exchange was the most positive or the most effective a way that gem sort of made you think about something differently or changed the way that you thought about something about this video clip. Another one can be like, there's like a list of potential prompts and they have to like, it's a place to start. They can write about anything that they feel like the gem had an effect on them, but like I give them a couple starting points. What is something that you had not considered before you interacted with the gem? What is a way that gem corrected you? And so it's like getting them to think, and the annotations become the visual reflection of their thinking after having done the work with the gem.
So what's that like? You're 3 decades almost into teaching.
Yeah.
Don't mean to give you some extra years.
That's right.
And all of a sudden, kids are chatting with some synthetic intelligence and then reflecting on it. Like, what's that look like?
I think at first it can be really intimidating because I think it wasn't really for me, but I can totally see how it is for other people. And I think that's in large part because I'm like, what do you got? Give me something new. Like, let's try new stuff. Let's do new things. Let's always. And like, it is a little exhausting because you're always reinventing. Like each year it never looks the same, but I kind of get invigorated by that. So it didn't seem that scary to me. Like,
I wasn't so worried about you.
What's it
What's it like to them?
Well, I think that they get like frustrated because they want to just be able to answer a question and then submit it. They don't, they want to be done.
Right.
And I think other teachers get scared because you have to do new things.
Yeah.
And I think students get frustrated because I'm pushing the rigor, not to use another buzzword, but like I'm pushing that rigor for them. I'm making them think about their thinking. And that metacognition is not a skill that we practice.
We talk about it a ton.
We talk about it a lot. But school's a lot about compliance. It's about like, can you do the thing that I said that I need you to do?
Yeah.
And it doesn't always reflect the learning. And part of that is because it's this big system and we could get into all that in another conversation, but like school is not always about the learning process. We talk a good game.
Mm-hmm.
We make it look the way that it's supposed to look. But at the end of the day, the kids, they're learning, it's not always about their thinking. It's about like, can you check these boxes? Can you do the thing that I asked you to do?
We've seen that forever. I mean, when we originally brought Pips to a middle school for summer school, and we were like, look at what you're going to do this summer. And some of the kids were like, no, where's the packet? And the teacher's like, no, we're not doing packets this summer. Like, we're going to do these projects. And the kid was like, I don't want to do this project. I just want the packet. Give me the packet that I can do the packet, and then I can be done with this.
So we had that same experience with it was a state mandate for a minute. It was like,
With the capstone?
Capstone, yeah,
Yes.
mastery-based assessment credit. And we did it where it was a personal project, right? And most of them picked baking.
Yep.
And some version of cooking, and they did it, and like it was cool. They did it with like their dad, and they learned how to make pasta, or they did it with people, and Darren, learned how to make pizza or whatever. But at the end of the day, it wasn't exactly what we were like trying to get them to do, because none of them wanted to do the extra effort. Like the extra effort was, they didn't understand why they would want to do that.
Right.
And Gem doesn't really let them. Gem and Notebook don't let them get away with that, really. Like, it's forcing it.
I love hearing you talk about GEMS and the role that they're playing in this. And, a year ago, we didn't have GEMS as easily accessible. So at that time, I think you were doing some great, just looking at what the kids were chatting about. And so how has GEMS been a game changer? Like, why are you using them? Why not just have the kids chat?
And just so I can clarify, so as you're thinking that prior they would just be in a frontier model, specifically Gemini, doing stuff in Gemini without a gem as an intervention, and then you were assessing against that. That was sort of like the Kentzian,
yes,
if we can call it that approach. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've evolved a little bit from the Kentz method, in large part because what I was finding is that they don't have the foundational skills of questioning to be able to engage in a solid way with AI. So they're posing questions like, write this essay for me, or help me understand ethical tension, but they don't necessarily know how to then further the conversation based off of what it produces. Plus, AI has a tendency to produce copious amounts of information in your initial. And so I went back and I tried to scaffold how they prompt, and I taught them a couple things I use the CRIT model, which is context, role,
iterate,
something.
Intent. I can't remember.
I think it's intent. And then I switched that and I tried something else, which was role, role, something, whatever, operator, whatever. And we tried a couple different acronyms to see if that would improve prompting. And it did a little bit. But the other thing is that they would get frustrated because when they would try to copy, because Gemini's a little bit behind and you can't see what the kids are doing in the exchanges, the other added thing was just a logistical problem, which is that they would copy and it'd be 30 pages of document. Yeah. And it was hard for them because in Gemini, it'd be you'd have to copy each individual chat, and you'd go in and you'd copy your prompt and then copy the response, and that would be very challenging for them. It's not really, right? But it's that executive functioning, cognitive load.
Another step.
It's another step that's too much for them. So that was one factor. And then even in Notebook, because my college kids were looking at, they built their own notebooks. We created a notebook. My librarian calls it the trap method, but it's a way for you to test your sources, validity and stuff. It's time, relevance, et cetera. And they were checking their sources in the trap notebook, then taking the ones that they knew were reasonable and putting them in a new notebook, and then they could use that notebook to write their paper. And the same thing was happening. You're only going to get their responses if they save them as notes, and you can only see what they put in the studio. And so there was a lot of inter steps that were creating problems of strictly grading chats. So the gem scaffolds that, and it enables you to say, okay, we'll have this conversation with the AI bot, and I'm going to put these parameters in to guide your steps. And then whatever it produces, you just pick 3. And then I grade those chats. And I'm letting you evaluate your own self and choose which chats you're going to pull out. You don't have to copy all of them. It's not going to be 30 pages. I don't want to read 30 pages. And it's just going to be these 3. And then your annotations are going to tell me what I need to know. It's going to show me you're thinking about what you had as a conversation with the bot.
Okay, so the gem's been this good intervention. At some level, you're making thinking visible. They're writing, they're reflecting, which again, I agree with everything you you both said about sometimes this is box checking, but when the day is done, if kids are reading, writing, thinking, reflecting through this process, like that feels like that's solid wins. Like you'd have a hard time arguing with other teachers that this is a bad idea. The other benefit of this whole process would be that they have some fluency working with AI systems, even if they're not yet mastering chatting right inside the frontier model. Are you feeling like, just honestly, and I know this is an experiment, but are you feeling as they get ready to graduate for your seniors, are they more sophisticated in their thinking about how to interact with AI than they were when they walked in the door?
Yeah, we had a conversation about that today. Presentations ended in 2 of my 3 classes, and one of the classes, period 5, they were reflecting on the way in which they liked the Shark Tank event because it felt like an interview, and they could transfer in their minds, like how like prepping and using AI to prep for potential questions could prepare them for like job interviews, college interviews, like just real world experiences. And we had a conversation about like, how would you do that? What would you ask? And, are they going to be asking like multi-tiered layered prompts to AI? Probably not. But are they going to be able to use it to feel more confident when they're out in the real world doing human interactions? Yes, I think so.
Could you see them building gems for themselves?
So my goal for quarter 4 is to get them to build their own gem.
Yeah.
But I think one of the other things is that in the AI planning team for Plymouth, we're looking at what is 6 through 12 going to look like. And when I was talking about scaffolding 6 through 12, it's like they don't have any of these skills. And we've talked to even like K5. Like we kind of tend to leave K5 out of the conversation. And K5 is super important in terms of the skills that they're building K5 about questioning and about understanding the world around them and being curious are the foundational skills that they need to then write better prompts.
Right.
So like we don't have it, especially now we're like, oh, well, they can't talk about it. Like we don't do AI that low. Like they don't even have devices. Like we don't do this. But like if we're not talking about what the skill of AI is and what AI literacy looks like 6-12, then we don't see the connection K5. Like I'm going to give a PD later this week to a group of teachers. And I specifically was like, no, it absolutely needs to be K12. Like, and I scaffolded it. So K2 has stations, 3-5 has stations, and 6-12 has stations because the K2 and the 3-5 are just as important in terms of building skills as the 6-12.
The inquiry skills that come through in science a lot, but we sometimes like forget about science and like how important we want those inquiry skills to start at the science. It's such a good in. There's so many cool NGSS provocations or pictures to look at and videos to do where like the whole, Open SciEd curriculum starts with inquiry questions. And we've got to get kids and keep encouraging them to ask questions, not just answer them.
Yeah.
And that's something that is a really big shift in education that we're trying to make, right? Is to get kids to be the askers of the questions, not just producing answers.
Well, you see that in the new K-12 social studies curriculum and the C3 framework and, it's career, college, and civic identity, right? And then there's an inquiry arc that starts in kindergarten where each level of the 4 arcs is designed to get them to a place where they don't just ask these compelling questions, right? That's the first tier. But they get to, in tier 4, the ability to apply that to the real world. And like, what does that look like? And they're doing that from elementary all the way up to 12th grade. And like the voices class is interestingly like it's an English class because we look at rhetorical analysis a lot and synthesis, but it's the inquiry arc is essentially what we're doing in that class. We're asking compelling questions like based off of the rhetoric of the Supreme Court, what does it mean to be human in America?
The question formulation technique is that a lot of schools are using or try to use is just such a great, there's so much good stuff about that, but like it starts with teaching kids how to ask questions, the difference between an open and closed question, what are your best questions, taking those questions and building on them, like all of that. And you can do QFT with kindergartners.
Yes.
And you can do QFT with a bunch of adults.
Yes.
So
Liz and I have been thinking about doing an episode on the podcast called The Kids Hate the AI. Are you experiencing like student pushback and how are you navigating that?
So I did have a student earlier in the year not want to take voices because we were going to be doing AI work.
Yep.
They thought about it and they were like, nope, I'm not doing it. I was like, all right, well.
What was the rationale?
It's mostly artists.
Yeah.
And they have a tendency to like be nervous about that. My younger daughter is a sophomore at Nonawag, and she hates AI with a passion. And it's in large part because she loves drama, she loves plays, and she worries about the art, right? The art problem. And there's also an environmental, like she's concerned about that. But it's funny, I actually shared that little clip that you talked about last week about Sheen, which is my older daughter's favorite thing, and and TikTok, and like how the TikTok uses more water. You know, you have to like 58 chats or whatever. And like we are engaging in a constant conversation. So like even in my own house, like my husband is an attorney and, you know, they're testing out different AI. So like AI is a really popular topic in my house, and having that conversation. It's valid concerns, like things we should be addressing and talking about, whether or not art is art, and what you know, the human input into that. What does that look like? The economic concerns, the environmental concerns, those are all part of the conversation. And you know, having this conversation about ethical tension, right, is important because they don't have the language to talk about what their concerns about AI are until you have this conversation about ethical tension. So one of the things I've like thought about and adjusted for next year is like, how can I move that conversation earlier in the year so that their project, instead of being true crime specific, can broaden into what are some issues with AI? What are some concerns you have? How can we do some research on that?
Yeah, loop us back in when you do that.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really interesting. You're involved in, I mean, there's other stuff in your practice because you've been doing a lot. As you said, you led 2 workshops here. You know, I know that a lot of folks are very interested in the work you're doing. I've been out traveling. They're like, oh, we saw Kate. It was amazing. So, I mean, clearly you're really resonating with folks. And I watched you facilitate some. It's just very thoughtful, as you can tell in your classroom. When you structure adult learning, you're really moving people through the process. There's protocols. It's really, really cool. It's no surprise that you're involved right now in a little competition. I guess we call it a competition here in the United States for some recognition as a teacher. You want to tell us about that, where you're at?
Well, it's officially, it's over. So like I'm just part of this cohort, but the official, I'm part of the 2026 Teacher of the Year semifinalist cohort.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And the Teacher of the Year was selected. So he's currently putting together some different activities for us to do. And so we should be hopefully out and about in a couple of weeks.
I love it's a cohort. That's so cool.
Yeah,
How many teachers are part of the cohort?
There's
then?
16 of us.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
It's really cool. And the Teacher of the Year, Brian Beddish, is from Danbury, and he is a 6th grade social studies teacher, and he's doing some really cool work with performance-based learning. And
he's I've visited his school. The principal is Mike Boucher, and we've done some work down there because they're really interested in personal interest projects. And they have this great class called 7, which is all around kids doing things that are to their interest. And Brian Beddish has been a big part of that.
He's a huge proponent, and he has his own podcast about like what they're doing.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, he's really an interesting guy, and he's just the most humble, like remarkable.
He is
He's a
awesome.
great human.
Is part of your role and in this kind of like ambassadorship, are you sharing some of this work or?
Yeah, so he actually just put me in touch with, there's a conference at Southern. So like we're talking about trying to put together something down at Southern. And then we're also looking at working with some of the college prep programs in the state to try to talk about what are some of the things that they can be doing. Like I already work a little bit with ARC in terms of new teachers and evaluating and, you know, mentoring new teachers. But Brian's looking at creating relationships for the Teacher of the Year cohorts this year and moving forward to help new teachers and incoming teachers have these mentors and these master teachers, which is such a cool, like, we're all so excited that he's like spearheading this and helping us figure that out.
I'm not at all surprised. He's awesome.
He's really a great guy. Yeah.
So we've talked about, you know, the environmental impacts and what kids are thinking and, you know, how you've done some shifting over the year and 2-3 years that you've been doing this. So as you think about next year, like, are there other shifts you're planning to make, or what's next for Miss Avkali's classes?
So I definitely am looking at keeping AI in sort of the forefront. But one of the things that's definitely going to shift is we're going to focus much more intently on the prompt process so that we can get a little bit further in their ability to pose better questions so that then they can create their own GEM tests, like stress tests, before like Q4. So now that I've done it a few times, I have like some ideas about how to get that so that the first semester is about building their understanding. And this is what I usually do. I try to build and front load the foundational skills that they're going to need for whatever we're doing in semester 1, so that semester 2 they can really start applying. And it's the same thing for AI. I'm looking at trying to build their questioning and their understanding of how to pose better prompts so that in the second half they can start applying and doing that.
I have a fun gem, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
Liz is going to scowl, so I'm only going to look at you and not at her. But it's a fun gem that's a student-facing gem on this kind of like clerk, colleague, and coach prompting. So they put in something that they're working on. It and helps them think through different types of gems. And I think we built one too for like a chat autopsy, so they could see, what does a lower quality chat interaction look like and a higher quality one. But I get why it's trickier. Yeah,
it's trickier to score.
Yeah.
It's not trickier, like, if you just make them give you the prompts, like, it's fine. It's just that you can't do that every single time because they're real, that gives them like fatigue. And then they don't want to engage in the way they're going to do as little engagement as possible because it's going to produce less, which means less for them to copy. Yeah. So that's not the goal. The goal is to get them to engage more. So you have to be thoughtful about what you're asking them to give you, because that higher functioning, that executive functioning stuff, we don't talk about it a lot, but well, at least in the day-to-day classroom, but it's super important. They just don't want to do it.
I'm so curious to see how over the next 10 years this all evolves, because when I think about the kids, like the high school seniors have had AI since they were freshmen, but really they already knew how to Google. Mm-hmm. And they were trained on this Google model of asking questions, which is as discreet and short as possible. Mm-hmm. And you get what you get and you kind of move on.
You just deal with it, yeah.
Where, when I think of, the class of 2030, mm-hmm. They may not have already had Google skills. And if the first things they learn are prompting skills, how different will that be? Because we don't really teach kids how to Google anymore. We just kind of expect that they've learned it.
Sure. Yep.
And so I'm so curious to see how that kind of scaffolds over time, that if the kids are learning both at the same time and they're going to learn to prompt, and how is that going to change?
Well, I'm building the foundation. I love that you're starting to involve K2 and 3-5. And I think over time, this will get easier because the practices will spread. Your AI planning team's doing that for sure too. Yeah. Any stories stick out in your head of just these kind of cool kid moments?
I do have one, which I'll tell you about, but you made me think of something, which is the SIFT article you had posted it, that idea of I had written it down because I wanted to mention it, but the stop, investigate. When you're fact checking and you're researching your work, that's something that's already evolving. You can't teach them to check their source anymore, which is something in media literacy units that I've done forever. You can't do that anymore. You have to get them to investigate the claim. So I have actually evolved, and they are now being taught how to investigate whether the argument is a strong argument. That's this year. I started it last year. This year is the first year we used it for real. And it's they have to deconstruct the argument and identify what's weak and what's strong rather than investigate the source, which is a new
sea change.
Yeah, it's a part of a different, it's fact checking is not what it used to be anymore. It's a whole different thing.
It's not.
Yeah, and everything is AI manipulated now, and it's really hard. Visuals are no longer trustworthy. It's wild.
And that's what we're seeing from kids too. Is they don't trust anything. Mm-mm. Where we see some people that trust everything, that are
oh, those
crazy
boomers
cat videos, right? And then at the same time we see kids that are nothing's real, and they don't believe things that are very much real because they're it's all AI.
Not all AI,
right?
You asked me about student experiences. My Voices kids came in and they did not want to do AI. They did not. They were what are we doing? Why is this so much work? And they come into Voices and they don't like how much work it is, period, right? A lot of them, Voices is unique for a lot of reasons, but one of the things that makes it unique is that you've got sophomores who are not quite ready for AP, who come into Voices to prep and passed their skills to be able to take AP. And then you have seniors who have taken AP and are stepping down because they're okay, I passed my AP, I'm going to take this Voices class. And so you have this broad range of skill and ability and of intellectual kids and kids who are just hard workers and maybe don't always get the complexity of the questions. And so you're dealing with and approaching these kids, but you're still pushing them. And they said, Miss Alcali, your class is so hard. Why is it so hard? And so we spent some time like unpacking that and like, well, what is hard? Like, what does that mean? And like, let's talk about that. And what are the habits of mind? And like, well, do you see this anywhere else? And we spent some time like going through the habits of mind, talking about metacognition, talking about all these different layers and like, where do you see that in your other classes? And at the end of the day, they see little pieces here and there, but voices is hard for them because we're doing all of them. And so for a while, it was quiet, right? A couple days. And then we're doing a Socratic seminar and they're engaged in the discussion and they are nailing this discussion. They are just like, it is amazing. I just sit back and watch. I'm like, I can't believe what you guys are doing. This is crazy. You guys are so great, right? And at the end, they're like, Miss Alcali, this is the hardest class I've ever taken, but I think I get it. I think I understand why it's so hard. And I was like, well, why is it so hard? They're like, well, because we have to think. And I'm like, yeah, that would be it. And so they're like, but it was like rewarding for a moment because they're really thinking, because it's not about what you think. Like one of the things about voices is that we talk about a lot of controversial topics. And so it's not, I don't care what side you come down on. We're talking about civic engagement. We're talking about politics. We're talking about the way the world sees things, right? I don't care whether you agree or disagree or what side you're on, but you have to question and you have to think. And they are doing that. And it's so rewarding to see them doing the hard work and being able to express their thoughts out loud.
For the listeners of the audience, right? I mean, I think the prevailing narrative on AI is that it's cognitive offloading. It's using AI not to think. So here's a class, and I'm not saying it's not an AI class,
right?
But here's a class that has very strategically brought AI in a meaningful way, and it is the opposite of them offloading.
Yeah, I think the predominant message is that it's going to make you dumber, and it doesn't. It's the opposite. It's really about the expert of the user and how can you use it to do what you want it to do. So the more expert you are in your content, the more aware you are in your area of expertise, the better advantage you are to use it. I mentioned my husband before. I'm not an expert lawyer. So like I couldn't tell him which AI platform he should recommend to his people, right? But I am pretty well versed in AI and can say like, hey, this is doing this well and this is doing this kind of not well. And like that feedback is good, but like I can't provide expert feedback on how to improve his use of the legal AI. But he knows that the legal research is better on one than the other.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, we're just really grateful for you giving not just a theoretical picture of what it looks like, but a really clear picture and roadmap. And we'll share your contact information if that's okay.
Absolutely.
I know you're kind of actively hoping to both grow your influence of this kind of work in your district, but also I think folks will really benefit from your work around the beautiful Nutmeg State and other places as well. One of the lovely things about this audience is that it's become global, and so I suspect there'll be folks who want to chat with you.
Yeah, and you can read my Substack.
I was going to say, you just started a Substack, right?
I did.
Go ahead, plug.
Yeah, it's called The Visual Thinker, and so we'll put my contact on there too, so that you can follow it. It's mostly about AI, but it's got a lot of things about like practical application of different ideas in the classroom. So there's just a whole couple of articles about class discussions and why those are better demonstrations of student thinking than an essay.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Love it.
Good.
So,
Thanks again so much. We really appreciate it.
thanks for having me.
We'll come back in a year before it's the next year of seniors getting ready to go off and wrap up their year and see how it's going. Fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, Keith.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. Oh my gosh. We recorded that a little while ago, and we just thought it'd be a really nice listen during the summer, because actually we got quite a lot of listenership during the summer. But we're so grateful to Kate and her partnership. She actually just, with you, I think she was down in one of our districts helping us lead some professional learning in a district that was just expanding their investment in some Google stuff. So really, really fantastic. So yeah, any other big takeaways from you for that one?
No, it's just so great to hear a teacher's perspective from the classroom and an English teacher, right? All teachers are struggling with AI in all different sorts of ways. But we often talk about STEM and the STEM field. So to bring in a humanities teacher was really fun.
Yeah. Speaking of great humanities teachers, English teachers that have been on the podcast, Casey Cuny was just out in Westport, a district where we work a lot. And actually the superintendent there, what the hell's that guy's name?
It's Tom Scarice.
Just joking, Tom. So Tom heard Casey on the podcast. He's like, I need that dude in my district. And Casey killed it. He came out and did a couple days. I mean, I shouldn't say he killed it. He really made a meaningful impact in the community, which is great. So he did a couple days of PD. He also did a parent night and a community night that I think had like 100 people in it. So we're just really grateful that the podcast, has helped make some of those connections. So thank you, Kate. Thank you, Casey. And thanks for all the folks who collaborate with us on this little adventure called ChatEDU. Speaking of which, Liz, it's time for a Bright Bite. So this is a case where AI is being used in some meaningful way. And could there be a more meaningful way than curing the common cold, Elizabeth Rade?
You don't like a cold. I don't like a cold either, but you really don't like having a cold.
I know, I'm such a nice guy, but I get super cranky. All right, so tell us about what's happened here. This was on Substack from the Intercept, Ending Respiratory Infections.
Intercept is a new $500 million philanthropic initiative aiming to eliminate common respiratory infections like colds and the flu.
Woo-hoo!
So, yeah, please bring it on. By leveraging advances in protein design and immunology, the fund will dual track investments into broad spectrum preventions like shots or sprays and indoor air cleaning technologies like far UVC light and filtration. So the initiative addresses a historic funding gap left by commercial and government entities seeking to de-risk candidate products through phase 2 or phase 3 equivalent trials to motivate market-driven adoption. So the AI connection here is that the project relies heavily on new platform technologies like modern biological data sets and protein design tools like AlphaFold, I'm assuming. Those all use advanced AI models. And this will all help engineer interferon-like molecules, locate highly conservative viral features, and create broad spectrum treatments that target multiple viral families without harmful side effects.
Fantastic. Yeah, good, Bright Bite. Let's make it happen. I don't need artificial slider intelligence. I don't even need ASI. Like if AI could help cure the common cold. I mean, I would take Parkinson's and ALS and cancer too. That would be nice along the way. But yeah, that'd be great fun. All right, Liz, I will see you back. We will be back in the studio for a couple weeks, not too long actually. So next week, July 6th, we'll record. That will come out the following Friday. Then a couple things just to tease. On July 14th, I'm going to be doing a little baby keynote at the NAESP, which is the National School Leaders Conference, right there in Orlando, Liz, right where you are, although I don't think of the same property. And then on the 15th, I'll be doing a presentation at AESA, the National Association of the USs. And just a quick tease, something down the road for anyone in the New England area that's focused on career and technical ed. I'm going to be doing a keynote and some sessions at the RIACTE, which is a conference for career and technical ed, on August 14th in East Greenwich, Rhode Island. So if you're a listener and you're in that area, please come out. And if hopefully you got a chance to have coffee and see Liz. Liz, safe travels home. Thanks for being down there representing Ed Advance, John, the Brazilian funk singer. The whole team. We're super grateful for your work down there.
Happy to be here.
Liz, it must be time from Florida to
roll the credits.
As always, we'd love to hear what you think. So please let us know at chatedu@edadvance.org. That's EDADVANCE.org. And also rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you are using. ChatEDU is brought to you by EdAdvance, the nonprofit regional education service center in Litchfield, Connecticut. This episode of ChatEDU is sponsored by the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing. ChatEDU is recorded, edited, and produced by Andre Angelo and Justin Pasco, whose dedication and expertise bring our discussions to life. ChatEDU's executive producer is the multi-talented rock star Cameron Audia. Additionally, we are grateful for the support of our colleague Gary Robinson, and we appreciate his time and talents. And of course, a big ChatEDU shout out to our fearless leader and executive director, Jonathan Costa, for inspiring the pod. And finally, a heartfelt thank you to our listeners for joining us on this journey exploring the thoughtful and innovative integration of AI in education.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Costa, and I am the executive director at EdAdvance, and I want you to know how much we appreciate our listeners. If you enjoy the podcast, feel free to explore EdAdvance's other AI services, which include customized professional learning of all kinds, conferences, our new middle and high school student AI literacy course, and our educator and leader micro-credential, co-sponsored by the Southern Connecticut State University Office of Workforce and Lifelong Learning. Just visit skills21.org/AI to learn more. That's all for now, and thank you for listening to ChatEDU.